Um, so today our group is going to talk about U.S. as a superpower. United States was a powerful country. There were many wars because of various factors, but one of the most important factor was industrialism. The reason why America won most of the wars was because they were well prepared. They had um, a heavy workforce and advanced military power. Steel and oil were abundant in America, which gave them an advantage in producing military power. Um, Steel was important because most of the war machines were built using steel and they brought it to life by using oil. From the 1875 to 1920, which is the time period before World War II, when American steel production grew drastically from 3,800,000 tons to 60 million tons annually. Um, Carnegie and Bethune Steel were vital during the 20th century because those two were the biggest steel companies in the world. Um, as massive steel production kept going, the U.S. took the lead in producing immense amount of steel. Um, Besides steel production, oil too was necessary for the producing military power. Oil began to increase its worth as soon as the World War II happened. Um, as the statistics show, crude oil for United States was the highest oil production. Was about 830 um, 30 during the World War II. So here's the Phantom F4 during the World War II, which was the type of aircraft that took up a lot of oil.
The Air Force requires this weapon system, operating from any part of the free world, to be capable of delivering nuclear or conventional ordnance of vast weight and varied nature.
Manufacturing was not efficient without a heavy workforce. American workforce was massive, allocated in producing advanced military power. As soon as World War II began, the U.S. was fully prepared with war machines and weapons. During the World War II, the U.S. land force had in total about 2,484,000 war vehicles. The total armored vehicles, other vehicles, artillery, mod, yeah, those are total vehicles for U.S. land forces. For the air forces, U.S. had 324,000 of all different kinds of aircrafts in total, which was way more than both of its ally and Axis. Axis was. Lastly, the naval forces, with a number of 6,700 in total of large ships, more than its ally and Axis too. Um, these statistics prove that U.S. as a superpower is true because of the industrial revolutions that resulted in mass production of military power, one of the five factors that led America to victory in many battles.
Okay, so the question that I kind of came around throughout this project was, how can America become this military power? And the reason it was able to become such a strong military and a superpower was because you see all the statistics that Quan showed you, but the reason that this happened was because you had people back home supporting the war and supporting the military. And when you have millions of people who need jobs, and there's all these different factories, steel companies, clothing companies, and all these different type of factories that are offering jobs, the majority of the U.S. population is going to start the chain by working in these factories and creating these things. And once the war comes along, the government comes to an agreement with most of the factories throughout the United States, and they say, okay, well, we need you guys to help back home by creating all these different types of military weapons and power to help us overseas. And that's basically why America was such a power in the 20th century. It wasn't because their technology was more advanced. It wasn't because their technology was superior to any of the other countries. It was the fact that they had so many different military weapons, and they had such a mass production of each different type of weapon that most countries just didn't have that production in their homeland. Here's the flow of power, and as you can see, when Britain was around, it was 1870. They were obviously the leader, but once you get to the 1950s, 1970s, around this range here, you can see the economic power is just completely, almost triple the size of its opponents. So the U.S. as a superpower, especially in World War II, there was just, like I said before, there was millions and millions of people back home creating tanks and airplanes, and like Dr. Murnane said, about every single day there was about 800 different types of aircrafts built a day. So when you have that type of military power, it's not about how advanced the weapons are, it's about how much there are. And there's actually a German commander-in-chief who actually is quoted at the end of the war, and he ends up surviving, and they asked him why the U.S. was so difficult to beat, and the first thing he said was, the tanks just kept coming up the hill. They'd knock out 3 of them, and then 40 of them would come back up the hill, and that all has to lead back to what happened at home. You have all these people at home supporting the war, supporting the country, building these tanks, building all these weapons, and then sending them over at a mass production. The country couldn't be stopped, especially at that point in the 20th century. So now we look at technological advancements today. These type of things are still going on. The U.S. still has millions and millions of people supporting the war and supporting them with military weapons and power, but it's kind of changed a little bit. The weapons we are using today aren't just tanks and planes and things like that. We're using things like nuclear submarines, which I actually have had the opportunity last summer to visit and be on, and the power that these things have is just unbelievable. They have things like right here, this is a drone, and that is, no person has to be on it. It's a remote control drone, but as you can see, it has those are 2 very, very dangerous rockets there. So they have heat vision space stations and all different things like that. And people say that the United States still is kind of losing its power as a military power, but I still personally believe that they still have some of, if not the best, technology out there. There's a lot of countries have caught up to them and created things like nuclear bombs and nuclear submarines and all these different advanced weapons, but nobody produces them at a rate that the United States can. And this is a video of a stealth bomber, and this is a about 5,000 ton aircraft that flies in complete silence. So you think about the amount of fuel and the amount of materials needed to make a plane that large that is completely silent. It shows you how advanced war technology has
The
come today.
B-1B Lancer. The men call it the Bone. Well, it's time first began upgrading the B-1B to carry conventional weapons. Over the past decade, the retooled B-1B has become a workhorse of the U.S. bomber fleet. In 6 years of operations over Afghanistan and later in Iraq, B-1Bs have flown more than 2,200 sorties and dropped more than 7,400 bombs, far surpassing the B-52 and the B-2 stealth bombers.
So,
But the B-1B's greatest weapon may be
as you can see, military power has definitely become more than it was in the 20th century, but what happened in the 20th century with all this industrial power and all this support in the homeland has kind of led to what goes on today and how advanced the weapons are today.
And no doubt the most powerful weapon is the nuclear weapon. And I'm gonna introduce the atomic bomb. There are two basic types of nuclear weapons. Those that derive the majority of their energy from nuclear fission reactions alone, and those that use fission reactions to begin nuclear fission reactions that produce a large amount of the total energy output. And here are two types. And German was the first one who brought out this idea of the atomic bomb, but they didn't have enough money to put in this research, and maybe there are also other reasons that caused German was not the first one who created the atomic bomb. And in July 1945, the Manhattan Project successfully detonated an atomic bomb in New Mexico desert. So America is the first one who invented the atomic bomb. On August 6, the United States dropped an atomic bomb named Little Boy on the city of Hiroshima in Japan. American president called for Japan's surrender 16 hours later, and warning them to expect a rain of room from the air, the like of which has never seen on the earth. 3 days later, on August 9th, the United States dropped another bomb in the city of Nagasaki, remaining the only use of atomic bomb in the history. Within the first 2 or 4 months of the bombings, the acute effects of the atomic bomb killed 90,000 to 146,000 people in Hiroshima and 39,000 to 80,000 in Nagasaki, and the world was shocked by the explosive power of the new weapons. From 1945 to 1949, only the United States had atomic bomb, and the bomb had the United States an enormous military advantage over the other nation. And during this time, the United States also sent troops to other countries all over the world, and other countries also very afraid of their power. And in 1949, the Soviet Union also exploded their first atomic bomb. America was no longer the the only one who owned the atomic bomb. Both American and Soviet leaders showed to achieve superiority in atomic weapons. And they are developing an atomic bomb named hydrogen bomb. A bomb is many times powerful than the two dropped in Japan. And this is the status the atomic bombs they owned during these years. And they continue to develop bombers and more accurate missiles during this year. And in only a few years, the two superpowers and their allies had hundreds and even thousands of the atomic bombs. So the atomic bomb made the United States even more powerful. And as a result, like as Huang said, the Industrial Revolution and the weapons used in the military that made America as a superpower. That's all.
Okay.